Does anyone else notice or feel that film just doesn't look the same anymore? When I say film, I'm maybe not using the most accurate term. I'm not just talking about box office motion pictures. I'm talking about commercials, advertisements, music videos, even kids' shows. I don't know if cartoons would fit into this category, but cartoons also, even. For a long time, I thought maybe it's just nostalgia, my nostalgia of my childhood, 90s, 2000s vibes. But recently, I've been watching more 90s and early 2000s movies, TV shows, commercials. That was my dog, have you heard that? Even cartoons. Basically, a time before social media and social media advertising. But I'm starting to really think it's not just nostalgia. I've seen a few other videos of other people that feel the same way on YouTube and are noticing it as well. Also, just across social media in general, I'm seeing posts reflecting the same observation. Why does film look like that now? Why does media look like that now? Why does it almost look like an ad? I ask myself the same thing. I ask, why is the lighting like that?
One thing in modern movies a lot of people don't like is what they call Netflix lighting. This very flat, sort of like seemingly lifeless look that a lot of Netflix and just general streaming shows have. People talk about it with the Devil Wears Prada sequel compared to the original. People compare the lighting in a scene like this on Anna Hathaway's face. There's pretty much no shadow. She looks pretty much even. Her face is just as bright as the background. They'll say, oh, that looks flat. And a lot of people are blaming it on all the digital aspects of filmmaking nowadays. Nowadays, we're shooting on digital cameras, whereas Devil Wears Prada 1 was shot on film cameras. We can move a lot faster nowadays as cinematographers and directors. We don't need as many lights, which allows us to focus on the performance. However, it's like a cutting corners. It's where can we save money? Where can we save time? 90% of people are not going to notice the difference in lighting between something like this, the Rings of Power show that just came out, and the Lord of the Rings from the 2000s, right? They're not thinking about that as they're watching the show. If we have technology that can get us to an acceptable cinematography faster, then why are we going to put more energy and effort into getting it to be great? Whereas back then, you had to put the energy and effort into getting it to be acceptable. So why not make it great? Truth be told, everything I just told you about LED lights and digital lighting applies to a lot of movies and TV shows that do look good. My big thing is if you have a problem with mainstream media, go look at independent media. There's plenty of people making smaller movies out there that look amazing. Instead of asking Netflix or Amazon to make something with more contrast and cooler lighting, just go watch a movie with more contrast and cooler lighting. We all get so trapped into the big corporations, but that's just my high horse. If you want better cinema, just go find it. It's out there.
There better not be one shadow in this entire film. Everything must be evenly lit. So my idea is to use cameras that have a higher resolution than the human eye, so everything looks really uncanny. Oh, it's a night scene. Okay, we should not be able to see anything. For color grading, I like gray, I like beige, I like grayish. Yeah, I know that we could make a whole set, but what if all of the environments are CGI? Yeah, everyone's gonna be looking at their phones, so we need to make sure that the dialogue is really obvious and repetitive because we don't trust the audience at all. In fact, we hate the audience.
Flat, washed out, and boring lighting is plaguing modern cinema, a stark contrast to the vibrant images we see in movies made in the late 90s and early 2000s. It's all too easy to write off this radical shift in how movies are lit to changes in technology. But it's not necessarily the new cameras or lights themselves that are the problem. While lighting in movies became subjectively worse, the technology used in production has gotten objectively better. Digital camera sensors can capture more color and contrast in an image than ever before, and many productions still use some of the same light fixtures studios used 20 years ago, alongside brighter and more energy-efficient LED fixtures. Unfortunately, it's a lot easier to make flat and lifeless looking movies than it is to make bold and creative decisions on set that you have to shape your entire production schedule around. When you're making a gazillion movies a year for release on streaming platforms, you may not have the time nor the will to light your scenes beautifully. Intentionality costs money and can quickly eat into the profits of the hundreds of Netflix originals that are pumped out every 2 seconds. When it comes to big budget blockbusters, though, directors can make their films look as colorful or drab as they'd like. Yet Netflix lighting has crept its way into movies with high profile theatrical releases. It's leaving viewers asking important questions such as, why is The Devil Wears Prada 2 lit like a bad Netflix original movie? What happened to this? It's time for me to rant a little bit, and hopefully I can intersperse some educational tidbits about cinematography in between my strong opinions. We have really come full circle when it comes to lighting for movies. In the early days of cinema, they didn't worry about lighting much at all, because there was no source of artificial light bright enough to properly expose early film stock. Filmmakers like George Méliès would build their studios out of glass to let in natural light. Movies made during this era are properly exposed, but look somewhat washed out with not much emphasis on lighting. If you wanted contrast back then, you'd sometimes have to paint shadows and light directly onto the set pieces themselves. Thanks to significant advances in lighting technology, more tools became available to filmmakers by the mid-20th century. Cinematographers could create and shape artificial light, giving us films with soft light shining on stunning femme fatales and hard light outlining hard-boiled detectives. You were still lighting around the constraints of your film stock, however. Even in the 1980s, you couldn't just turn on the camera and film. For a movie like Amadeus, a period piece set in the 18th century, they had to burn special candles that produced brighter flames and hide lights off camera to craft the desired image. Even as film technology improved, every shoot still required careful planning, and this was the case for many years. Though high-definition digital cameras existed by the late 90s, film was the gold standard for all Hollywood films, even in the mid-2000s. Camera technology has improved drastically since then. Digital cameras manufactured in recent years can practically see in the dark, and cinematographers can shoot their period pieces with available light in the dead of night, using state-of-the-art cameras such as the Sony Venice, used to film Harriet in 2018. Just like in 1902, filmmakers today can start rolling without turning on a single light, except they can shoot wherever and whenever, and not just in a greenhouse during the day. With this advancement in technology, it has become all too easy to forgo intentional and dramatic lighting for the sake of expediency. Creator Sassy Grilled Cheese attributes this to the downfall of the beautiful lighting seen in the original Devil Wears Prada.
Although now I'm seeing 2 films made by directors outside of the norm of Hollywood that started on YouTube. These 2 films have been received really well. You probably already know what 2 movies I'm going to say: Obsession and Backrooms. These 2 movies, to me, are using some elements that are reminiscent of 90s, 2000s, even before that, media, but not in a way that is trying to be an exact copy, but more so blending the elements from previous eras with present day elements, which gives me hope that we may be entering into a new era of film. I hope. One that can actually step outside of the box more. From what I've seen of those 2 movies, I noticed one element of what has been missing in the 2020s era of film and media in general. This element was used a lot more in the 90s, 2000s, and before that. This element is shadows. Lighting now in a lot of film and media is so two-dimensional. I noticed it even comparing a 2020s serial ad compared to a early 2000s serial ad. The bright studio lighting at some point just became too bright. That type of bright, almost social media advertising type lighting, to me, takes away mystery and dimension. Even when comparing cartoons, like the Cartoon Network era shows, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Dexter's Laboratory. Even other kids' shows from that time, like Blue's Clues and one of my personal childhood favorites, Big Comfy Couch. It's fascinating to notice the difference between the lighting and the shadows in 90s, 2000s, before then even, media compared to 2010s, even more so 2020s. In recent decades, it seems like there's a lack of dimension apparent in all types of media, even music videos. Again, I've said film in this video as an umbrella term when referring to certain types of media, but maybe that's not even really accurate because real film is so much less common than digital now, which I'm sure in its own way is a big contributing factor, but also maybe not, because in the early 2000s, there was digital film and media also. I remember one Christmas when I was in 4th grade, I asked my mom for a video camera. It was a 2000s digital camera that used mini CDs instead of like a modern day micro SD card. That's more common now. But I still remember how the videos that I made on that camera looked. I've always loved how media can look different with intentional lighting. Watching behind the scenes of movies and music videos in the early 2000s and the 90s, the process and the lighting is so much different than now. I'm not an expert, but the lighting setups seem different, obviously, but just it seems like a totally different production. If any of you are experts, I would love to learn more about those specific differences and lighting in film techniques then compared to now. Anyway, I've just been thinking about all of this and wanted to make a short comparison video. As I mentioned before, I do have hope that we may be entering into a new era of film that has more depth visually and is, like I said, more, I guess, out of the box and maybe even reminiscent of previous decades. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching.